Once, in a small village nestled between the mountains and the sea, lived a boy named Arun. He was 10 years old, with untamed black hair and curious eyes that always seemed to be looking out the window, never at the blackboard. Arun hated school. It wasn't that he was lazy. He just didn't see the point. Why memorize multiplication tables when he could count the waves crashing onto the beach? Why read dusty old books when he could climb trees, chase crabs, or build kites out of banana leaves? Every morning, his mother would wake him with a sigh, already dreading the battle ahead. "Arun, time to get ready," she'd call softly. "But why do I have to go?" he'd groan from under the bedsheet, which he'd pulled over his head like a turtle in its shell. "Because learning is important." "To whom?" he'd mumble. "Not to me." His teachers weren't much help either. Mr. Rao, the math teacher, had a voice like a ticking clock, always droning, never stopping. Mrs. Desai, who taught history, read from her notes as though they were being forced through her teeth. Arun sat in the last row, sketching boats or scribbling made-up languages on his notebook. He often got scolded. Sometimes he was sent out of the classroom. Once, he was made to stand in front of the whole school during assembly and apologize for sleeping in class. That was the final straw for Arun. After that day, he refused to go. "I'm done," he declared. "School isn't for me." His mother wept. His father grew silent and disappointed. The neighbors whispered. But Arun didn't care. He was free now, free to explore the forests, the beaches, and the bustling village square. At first, it was bliss. He spent his mornings fishing with the old men on the pier, who taught him how to bait a hook and read the tide. He learned how to tell time by the position of the sun. He helped the fruit seller weigh mangoes using ancient balance scales. He followed the carpenter, fascinated by the smooth way he turned raw wood into doors, chairs, even toys. Arun was learning, just not from books. But the village began to change. One by one, his friends stopped playing after school. They had homework. They were studying for exams. They were dreaming big dreams, of becoming engineers, doctors, teachers. "You should come back to class," his friend Samir said one afternoon. "You're smart, Arun. You could be something." "I am something," Arun said proudly. "I can catch fish, climb any tree, and tell when it'll rain. That's enough." Samir looked at him sadly. "Is it?" Then one day, something happened that would change everything. A group of strangers came to the village. They were young, excited, and full of ideas. They were building a new library and offering free workshops to any kids who wanted to join. Out of curiosity, not interest, Arun peeked in. There were computers, cameras, science kits, piles of strange books with bright covers. People were painting, making robots out of old junk, even learning how to fly drones. One volunteer, a kind woman named Reena, noticed Arun lingering outside. "You don't have to join," she said gently. "But you're welcome to watch." He did more than watch. Over the next week, Arun returned every day. He tried everything. He coded a simple game. He created a miniature raft that floated using a balloon. He took apart an old radio and fixed it. Reena noticed his talent. "You think differently," she said. "School doesn't always make space for that. But that doesn't mean learning isn't for you." Arun stared at her. No one had ever said that before. With Reena's help, Arun re-enrolled in school, but on his own terms. He was allowed to spend half his time in regular classes and the other half in the new exploration lab the volunteers had started. There, he thrived. His natural curiosity and hands-on skills made him a leader among his peers. He taught others how to build kites, fix fans, and track stars in the night sky. He discovered a love for physics. It was like magic with rules. He began reading books, real books, because he wanted to, not because someone told him to. Arun would go on to win a national science fair at the age of 15 with a low-cost wind-powered water pump he designed for small farms. At 18, he earned a scholarship to a university far away, where he studied engineering and design. He never forgot his village, or the boy he used to be, the one who hated school, not because he was lazy or ungrateful, but because no one had ever shown him the kind of learning that lit a fire in his heart. Years later, Arun returned to the village, not as a student, not as a dropout, but as a teacher. Not the kind who reads from notes or scolds kids for daydreaming, but the kind who asks questions, gives space to wonder, and says, "You think differently. That's your gift." And in his class there was always a place by the window, for the kid who was always looking out, dreaming of something more. When Arun returned to the village, he was 24 years old, taller, wiser, and carrying more than just a backpack. He brought with him a degree in mechanical engineering, a notebook full of inventions, and a dream that had been growing quietly inside him for years. He wanted to build a school that didn't feel like a prison. Not a place of rules and punishments, but a place of questions, exploration, and joy. A place for kids like he once was. Kids who didn't fit into the system but had fire in their minds and magic in their hands. He called it the Learning Tree. It started as a small building, half bamboo, half recycled metal, with no desks, no bells, and no uniforms. The village was curious at first, then skeptical. Who teaches without textbooks? Where's the discipline? This is not real education, some elders grumbled. But the children came. First 10, then 20, then 40. Some came after their regular school. Some dropped out of government school just to be there full-time. Inside, they learned to build solar lamps. They grew vegetables in vertical gardens. They wrote plays and performed them in 3 languages. They made small documentaries using phones tied to sticks. Arun guided them, not with answers, but with questions. What do you think? What happens if we try it another way? Why do you believe that? The kids thrived. They became thinkers, doers, builders, artists. The village, however, remained divided. One day, a government official visited the village. She was from the district education office, tall and stiff in a gray sari. She walked into the Learning Tree with a clipboard and a frown. "This," she said, "is not a registered school. It doesn't follow the curriculum. There are no certified teachers. And these children, what are they even learning?" Arun tried to explain. "They're learning by doing. By solving problems. Some of these kids built a water filter using sand and charcoal. Another group designed a windmill out of scrap." She wasn't impressed. "None of this matters unless they pass standardized exams. You're wasting their future." Those words hit Arun hard. The same old idea again, that learning only mattered if it fit inside a box. The next morning, Arun called a meeting with all the students. "We're under pressure," he said. "They might shut us down. They think what we do here isn't real learning." The room went quiet. Then one girl, Riao, a quiet 12-year-old who once stuttered when speaking in front of people, raised her hand. "So let's prove them wrong," she said. And that's what they did. They spent the next 2 months combining creativity with curriculum. They studied for the district-level exams, but in their own way. They used games to learn math. They built real circuits to understand electricity. They staged a play of India's freedom struggle to prepare for history. Science was taught through experiment. English through debates and storytelling. On the day of the exams, 18 students from the Learning Tree sat down with hundreds of others from traditional schools. They didn't just pass. They ranked among the top 10% in the district. When the results came out, the same official returned. This time without the clipboard. Just a smile. "I was wrong," she admitted. "You're not just teaching differently. You're teaching better." Soon, other villages came to see the Learning Tree. Arun started training young educators to create similar spaces in their own communities. Not just schools, but learning centers built on curiosity, not fear. He wasn't just a teacher now. He was a spark. And the flame was spreading. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the children were still tinkering in the workshop, Arun sat under the banyan tree. the same tree where he used to nap as a boy to avoid school. He smiled to himself. The boy who once hated school had built one the world had never seen.